Greetings once again. So I've been invited to offer some reflections on 47,000 Beads. First of all, this is the only Two-Spirit children's book written by a Two-Spirit person. It's the American book. There is also a Canadian book, but it was written by a member of the Haudenosaunee Nation, and it's written by an ally. So this is it when it comes to stories. And so the first thing that I would like to offer is that stories and children's stories are not innocent, and they show biases. And I remember as a student and a young student in reading Dick and Jane, first of all, I didn't see myself in that entire story, both in complexion, but also there was only two genders, Dick and Jane. And all of the Western ontologies or Western ways that are implicit within that simple story. And it was, only until I started to own and know and love and to honor who I was and that I began to unpack those stories. Simple stories like Dick and Jane. And so thank you so much for that song, Brave, and to see ourselves. And to see myself in this story is so incredibly powerful. And there are many, many teachings, and so I just would like to offer you a couple of teachings that I think are incredibly important about relationship and standing in and leaning into relationships. And so the first theme that I would like to pull out is, so my name is spelt wrong. I corrected it once, and I didn't catch it on this slide. I'm so sorry. It's A-N. So the next, within the story is, it's important to note, when Auntie Iota, she baked some bread, and she went to El. And there is, that is an incredibly important, that Auntie Iota was going to ask something of El. And she offered something. And so there is that reciprocal relationship in which that Auntie Iota didn't show up empty-handed. She baked some bread. The other thing from this story is I love who else should I ask? Auntie sent an email to her grandma. Sent an email, right? And you're like, what? Right? Where's the smoke signals, right? There was probably a nasty windstorm, right? That's when we call it the technological breakdown, right? It's too windy. What are you saying? And I think there's something incredibly important there. And I think there's a teaching for all of us within that email. I think there's a Mi'kmaq elder who came up with this theory called two-eyed seeing. And with two-eyed seeing, and for the talk of yesterday as well as in the way in which that as a two-spirit person, right? In two-eyed seeing is that with one eye, you look at questions from, you look with a Western eye frame. And there are many good gifts that we've gotten from Western perspectives, like emails. But within the other eye, you see from the world from an indigenous perspective, that reciprocity and being reciprocal of offering something before asking and sitting into relationship. And I share that two-eyed seeing is because we are not special. If I can do it, you can do it. Although I've taken the time as a PhD student to learn your ways so I can see the strength and the beauty and the gifts and the teachings that Western folks and Western ontologies, some of the gifts, right? Some of it is just pure violent and I have to acknowledge it and then dismiss it. But we cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. And from the other eye is, from an indigenous perspective, I see the beauty of what we have to offer. And I offer that teaching, and what from the story of this teaching is that learn our indigenous ways. Comb that eye so that you can see from our lens and our teachings, and then merge and blend. And in the merging and the blending is begin reeling into that relationship is you're not betraying your Western ways at the expense of our indigenous ways, but you're marrying the two. And I think as a two-spirit person, is I'm constantly finding that marrying of the two so that we can may move forward together. And so I think that is an incredibly important note. And the final teaching is when Peyton is like thinking and preparing for the giveaway. And we, as Native folks, we always do giveaways, right? And it's like, what should I give away, Peyton thought. Grandmother said, it is always something you value that you give first. Wait, I got it. And it's her most prized and gift, her abalone shell. Right? And I know this is also a teaching in which that I've always taken to heart. There is a teaching from my Crow brothers and sisters down south, right? For the Crow people is when you give a compliment, if you give a compliment to a Crow person, is their immediate response. They are honored and bound by this ethic that they offer you that. So I remember taking a bunch of like New York City slickers, Two-Spirit City slickers, to a Two-Spirit gathering down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And there was a sizable Crow contingent, right? And my New York City slickers, right, my relatives, were like walking around like, great necklace, love that vest, right? And they came to me like Saturday afternoon and they had cleaned house, right? They were like, look, he gave me the t-shirt that he was wearing. And they were just like, they were loaded with stuff, right? And so it is that not being bound by stuff and not being encumbered by stuff. And that that when you also hyperly or maybe overly give your attentiveness to stuff, right, is you say things like, wow, Tony, that's a beautiful necklace, right? What I'm saying is you don't have stuff, right? And so you always speak in the negative too, right? Or you have my attention, you don't have my attention. And so we say things when we talk about. So one of the teachings around giving and gifting is that when I get into Native spaces, rarely will I talk about stuff. But I will talk about what amazing eyes you have, right? Because I get those eyes on me. Cindy, what an amazing smile. Or Tony, how kind. And I get that kindness, and those gifts come to me. So I downplay stuff and to also devalue it and look at the person for who the person is. And so if I look at the honor and acknowledge honor, I get honor. And I get that mirrored back to me. And I think that is one of the powerful teachings of my Crow brothers and sisters, and I offer that teaching to you. And then there's also the stuff around what Peyton is telling me is that giving should hurt. In that when I get connected to something, and I'm like, oh my God, I love this, right? My first instinct is to give it away. And I immediately start looking for who should I honor, and I give it away. Because it should hurt. Because it should mean something. If it doesn't mean anything, you're just throwing it away. But when you love something and you honor it, you cherish it, is when you should relinquish it and free it into that. And I think this is one of the most powerful teachings in which that Peyton offers. And it is leaning in, and giving should hurt. And so I share all of these teachings within this. And I'm not talking monetarily. It is around the act of if I value it too much, then it has control and power over me. Now, I do have to, my partner, and life soul, and life mate, I have to make some modifications because he's not native. And so I do have some rules of like things in which that he gives me is I'm not honor bound to give them away, and so I cherish those things, and so I have to be very clear, because he gives me a lot of beautiful and amazing things. So a lot of times I don't wear them. He bought me this beautiful beaded, custom-made bracelet, and he's always on me of like, why don't you wear that, right? Because I'm like, if I wear it and people compliment me, or if I attach myself too much, I feel like that I have to like give it away, and so I have to like make some modifications. Again, two-eyed seeing. So I share those reflections with you, but there are many other incredible deep story themes within this storybook that are culturally specific. And so I share about how you can do some two-eyed seeing as you lean into these difficult conversations and to get into right relations with our Indigenous people, in which that you cannot and we must not only see from your one Western eye perspective. You must look from a trans perspective. You must look from a person of color perspective. You must look from all of those different Indigenous eyes and open up, and you will see this incredibly beautiful, rich, complex, wild, disruptive world around you as you merge that into your view. And you will be able to see the world in such beautiful, wild, and incredibly imaginative, beautiful rainbow ways. It is with that I offer that. Thank you. Hi, kinonas.